Hey folks, welcome back. So hopefully you watched my previous videos about the 2D20 system from Modiphius via the John Carter of Mars role-playing system. Now that was, as I said, a simpler version than what you'll find here in Star Trek Adventures. But before I get into the details of all that though, because Star Trek really does have a lot more to it than John Carter. There are actually 4 different ways to kind of get started in the game. You have the starter set, you have the core rulebook, you have the Klingon Core Rulebook, and you have the Tricorder Set lurking in the back here. So I thought I'd just do a quick video kind of outlining what are the pros and cons of each of these options. I think it can be a little confusing for a new player knowing what to buy. It kind of depends on your level of experience with RPGs, your level of experience with Star Trek as well. And, you know, they all have pluses and minuses. So I'll just go quickly through the contents. We're not going to talk about the rules or anything like that just yet. We'll go through the core rulebooks in detail later on in future videos. And then we'll talk more about the ins and outs of the system and the pluses and minuses of that. But first things first, it's a great game. It's well worth getting into. But since it is confusing, there's these 4 different ways to do it. I thought let's just go through each of the main ways to get into the system, and hopefully it'll help you decide which thing you want to go for. So we'll start with the starter set. Now, when you get this, it's a pretty thick box, like a 2-inch thick box. You know, it seems like it's a pretty hefty. On the back, you know, it says. This is what I take issue with, really. They say that the starter set contains everything you need to begin your journey to the final frontier. And that's sort of true. I mean, you have 5 pre-gen characters. You have a couple of, you know, kind of battle maps. You have a nice 3-part mini campaign. You've got a little kind of introductory rules booklet. Gives everything you need to kind of start with. You have some dice. You have momentum and threat tokens. And that's mostly what you need. But then when you actually open it up, I mean, bear in mind, it's about 20 quid list price. I got it for much less than that. I think like 13 from Dungeon Land or some such place. So it's not expensive or anything. But look at this dice pack you get. I mean, you get 2 D20s. Now, despite the fact that it's called the 2D20 system, very often you'll be spending momentum or giving threat to the GM to roll more than 2 D20s. So there's absolutely no way that this is enough to really get started with the game unless you want to roll the D20s and try and remember what you got and then roll again and then potentially roll a 5th one because you can roll up to 5. And also a lot of weapons, especially with starship combat, they need a heck of a lot more than 4 combat dice. So to me, the starter set doesn't contain everything you need to start to play. You need at least 2 more dice sets because that would put you up over the top. The other thing that's kind of sneaky is that the original set of dice sets they used to sell, in addition to the starter set and the core rulebook and all that, they contain 3 D20s and I think 6 attack dice. And then they downgraded the packs of dice to just like this, 2 D20s and 4 attack dice, and the prices went up as well. So basically, there's more plastic packaging. You're having to buy more packs to get the amount of dice that you need. Whereas before, you could get the starter set, get 1 pack of additional dice, and you'd have 5 D20s. You'd have just enough, like 10 attack dice, which is plenty for most things, and you'd be ready to go, basically. And it'd be an easy recommend. But now that you need to get 2 packs of dice and 1 pack of dice, a blister pack at list price is £17, which is actually almost as much as the starter set itself. So that to me is a huge, huge negative. And, you know, if you're a newbie, you're first coming to the game system, and then you find out, oh, but I'm going to be spending momentum all the time to buy new dice, but I only have 2 dice. I mean, it really puts a cramp in your style. So I think that's a huge misstep on behalf of Modiphius. I really think they should have thought about that more clearly. As far as the rest of the stuff, I mean, the starter rules, they're really, really thin. Basically, just barely what you need to kind of get started with the game system. So they give you the basics of what the attributes, disciplines mean, what the challenge dices are, you know, what the core sort of elements on the character sheet are all about, traits, how you work with task difficulty, you know, why you might use difficulty 0 tasks. You know, the rules of play are there, sort of, but there's a heck of a lot more in the core rulebook. I mean, this is a really, really thin packet. It's more than enough to get you started, to get a flavor for the system, but especially its starship rules. The starship combat is a little bit difficult to manage anyway, and to cram it into like 6 pages is a tall order. They sort of get it done, but yeah, I mean, it could have been, I think they could have probably put, you know, made this 48 pages instead of 24, and that would have made a big difference to the readability and kind of the comprehension for new players. It's not going to be great for new role players because it's kind of packed with info page to page, but it's not bad. I mean, but it's not as good as something like, Call of Cthulhu. The starter set is fantastic with how it introduces you to the rules through a kind of single player kind of choose your own adventure type way. So you go through this solo scenario to see how the basics work. Then you read the starter rule pack. Then you run the first adventure, which guides you through every aspect of what you're doing. You learn as you play. It's got a multi-stage kind of learning approach, which works, I think, really well. But they didn't quite go that far in this one. Now, as you can see, I haven't used the tokens for this one because, in fact, I've played this online anyway. But that's the other problem, is that they don't give you a PDF for free with this like they do with every other product they sell. And that struck me as really kind of penny pinching as well. It makes it harder, again, for new players, if they want to print out another copy of a character sheet. You got to go pay for the PDFs instead of just downloading them or getting a copy from your GM or whatever. The tokens are really nice and thick. But I haven't needed to punch them out since I've been using online solutions for that stuff. You do have a couple of maps here. So you have this sort of rocky jungle bit. You have an indoor kind of portal thing. And you have some kind of starship hallways and warp core and all that kind of good stuff. And then you have a space map. Again, with some starship corridor action on one side, and then you have a sort of map of the system that's in the adventure. So you divide into zones to make your starship combat a little bit easier to cope with, and then you have another kind of ground combat environment here. So maps are decent. They look nice as far as the tiles and everything, but the paper is just normal poster paper. Nothing it's not like thick cardboard or anything. Not as good as something you get in like a Free League box. The starter campaign is actually really nice. I have to say I really like this one. It's got a nice build up in 3 acts. Gives you at least a few sessions of play. And it does help you throughout. I mean, as you're coming up to a new situation in the rules, they'll kind of help you set the scene. Okay, you've got to pilot a shuttle now. How does that work, right? So you ask the players to do this type of task, give it difficulty this. There is a lot of guidance for the GM, which is great. It's got that classic LCARS look from Star Trek Next Generation, which is immediately making things feel sort of at home for Star Trek fans. Again, I'll try not to linger too long on these pages so you won't spoil anything, but it is actually a really nice intro to the game. But I think they could have done a bit more. I would have liked to see, and in fact I put a post on the Modiphius forums to this effect in their book request thread the other day. I'd like to see an updated version of the starter set where just fill the box with more stuff, basically. Give us the amount of dice we actually need. So the amount that you get the Tricorder set, 5 D20s and at least 10 combat dice. Give us a couple more pre-gens. Give us a follow-up campaign to this. Give us like 6-7 sessions worth of play. Jack up the price by a tenner, and it'll feel like a much better value. But as it stands, it's a little bit tough to recommend, especially without the free PDFs. The pre-gen characters are pretty good. You've got First Officer, Con Officer, Chief of Security, Chief Engineer. You have your Medical Officer. And you have your Starship, which is a Galaxy class, which is pretty awesome. Definitely one for the TNG fans, the USS Magellan. It's great to fly a Galaxy class in an intro adventure. I think that's really nice. They didn't make it some sort of less of a fan favorite, less recognizable. So as starter sets go, I mean, it's decent. But by no means would I say it's one of the best. I think still Call of Cthulhu was the first to really nail that. And I think they're still the champs. They just put so much value in that box. But this one is so close, Just give us more dice. Give us a couple more pre-gens. Throw some more adventures in the box, and I think it'd be amazing, even if they had to jack it up to 30 quid. I said in the thread, I'd buy one for myself. I'd buy them for presents, because then you could genuinely have a whole table start play from that box and play for a couple of months worth of sessions. That'd be great. Now then you have the core rulebook. So this is the first rulebook that came out. It's focused on the Federation, so you can tell by the cover here. So the assumption is that you're going to be working in Federation space. They have this lovely map on the end papers. You can see that all the pages are this kind of black background with white text. Some people have trouble reading it. I think it looks really attractive in print form, but in PDF form, it makes my eyes want to explode. But luckily, they provide you free PDFs that are both this style and what they call printer friendly, which is all black text and white background, much more readable on a screen. So not to worry about that. This core book is great. It's filled with information, background on Federation, lots of stuff that if you're new to the universe or if you're a Star Trek fan of sorts, but you're not really deep into it. There's all this stuff about the background of Starfleet, what the Prime Directive is, Starfleet Academy, everything you need to know to sort of situate yourself in the Star Trek universe is available to you in this book. And it's just really nice production quality, as you find often with Modiphius. And you can get it for pretty good value nowadays. I mean, I got this for really cheap. There was a sudden sale on the Modiphius site, and I got it for like £26 or something. So you can get other sites will sell it for close to 30 or a little bit over £30. So I'd imagine that's something like $35 to $40 US. The problem with this book is that, as the first version of the 2D20 Star Trek system, it's a little bit kind of poorly organized, and it doesn't have quite as many examples of how things work, how you might use things like certain types of traits or using advantages and disadvantages during play. The GM tips could use some work. The organization is a little bit all over the place. So it can be a bit difficult to learn the system directly from this without like a couple of read-throughs and kind of going back and forth, making sure that you understand what's going on. And there's been some errata as well, but I think they've fixed that in subsequent printings. But it really is, visually and tactily, it's lovely. It's a great product. There also could be a few more illustrations if you ask me, but I do love that at least you get, quite a bit of nice illustrations in here. And they're not all just like pulled from the shows, there's original artwork. And they've got, really nice pictures of fan favorite ships. We've got the Galaxy class here once again. But, if I would recommend this book if you want to have the full rules at your fingertips, if you're an experienced role player, or if you want more background on the Star Trek universe than what's in the starter set, get this one. And if you're an experienced RPG player, then the misorganization of the rules won't bother you that much because it's still a lot better than, the games that we were dealing with, rules from 20 years ago, where they were just, there was basically no editing going on. And there's also a sample adventure as well at the end. So that's pretty cool. And of course your character sheets, all that kind of good stuff. So all in total, how many pages we got? I'm not entirely sure. So it's about 350 pages. So not bad at all. Pretty beefy tome. I was really happy when I got this. The love for the Star Trek universe comes through on every page. And it does really have plenty to do right off the bat. You don't feel like you need to go out and buy a bunch of supplements to make it really kind of interesting and fun to create characters. Much further down the line, we got the Klingon Empire Core Rulebook. This really surprised me. I didn't know they were going to do a new core rulebook for the Klingons, but they have to say they did an amazing job with this. First of all, the book is actually much nicer. If you compare it to the original core, the binding on this is sort of rounded. It doesn't look as impressive on the shelf. This one, it's really tight and square. It looks really sharp. It's also much thicker. You've got some silk bookmarks as well. The cover looks fantastic. I think the printing quality is definitely increased. And here's the important part, is that it's got a complete and updated version of the Star Trek Adventures 2D20 game system. Now, you will hear from some people who are experienced with the system. When new players ask, well, what the hell book do I buy? They say, oh, get the Klingon book because it has the most recent version of the rules. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that because it does contain a more recent version of the rules, but you really have to care about the Klingons, I think, to get the most out of this. Even the end papers, right? This is a Klingon Empire. They're not showing you the whole picture like in the end papers for the other core rulebook. The entire visual style of the book is done in relation to the Klingons. There's Klingon proverbs, there's Klingon writing everywhere. All the history is about Klingon history in the Beta Quadrant, the history of the Empire, So if you're not kind of well versed in the Starfleet side of things, then this book is not going to enlighten you that much because it's all about Klingon stuff. But I mean, the way they've organized the rules is so much better in this book, I have to say. We're just in the background stuff here, so I'll flip forward a little bit. But yeah, there's lots of great history and background. So we get into the core rules. They divide them into core rules and advanced rules. And the core rules are just 12 pages long. So, if you go through this, you've got enough to kind of get off the ground. Everything has nice little sidebars, when you're going to use your rerolls, when you're going to use your difficulty zeros, how to set task difficulties, and how they can be affected by other things. Everything that previously was unclear in the system is now made very clear. And there's more examples as well. So there's examples of momentum spends, examples of traits and complications, common uses for momentum, using why you would use threat to pay instead of momentum. Traits can be particularly damaging. They really have taken in a lot of feedback from the playing community. And they organized the rules and edited everything much, much better. The advanced rules, that's where we get into the extended tasks and stuff like that. And then we get into life path character creation, talents, supporting characters, and all of that, again, is really well written, really well presented. How you can build your character's life path up to learn how they come up through into the Klingon version of Starfleet, basically, and all the different side effects of the different things that you can roll on your life tables and so forth. There's details on talents, of course, recommendations for character development. And this is really important stuff as well because there's not much in the way of character development rules in the original rulebook, but there's some new systems for that in the Klingon book that are actually really good. So that's one area where you will find definitely some added value because you can apply the Klingon advancement rules and stuff like that to the Federation game, no problem at all. There's also rules for running a house, building your house legacy, house advancement. So there's this kind of aspect of Klingon politics comes into it. I mean, they really thought this through. You've got great samples of weapons and tech, combat gear. I mean, look at all this cool stuff, and there's a great selection of starships as well. So we've got pretty much every ship you'll find in the Klingon fleet is represented. They summarize, all the details you need to know about the profile for each ship, what the department ratings mean, focuses. I mean, the rules are delivered much more clearly here. So once we get past the starship rules, we get into starship combat, and they kind of go through examples of different ways to handle it, things you can do from different bridge positions. They've done a great job with this book. I just wish that they would make basically the same book, but make it for the Feds, and I would buy it again. I really would. I think it's really well done. And then we get into the ship stats. You can see again, the Klingon theming runs throughout. Once we get through all the Klingon starship classes, like there's our friend the Bird of Prey, the Negvar battleship, all that stuff. They give you starship creation rules, then star bases, colonies, and then there's a whole section at the end about alien vessels. So UFP, Federation allies. We got the Old Constitution, the Movie Connie, the Defiant, which is the tough little guy, the Excelsior, and the Galaxy class and Intrepid class, the Miranda class, and then we get into the Romulans and their birds of prey, which are terrifying, and the Cardassians with their cruisers. We got some Borg in here as well. And then some great game mastering advice from running Star Trek adventures in general to helping out with character creation, managing the rules, managing the players, supporting characters, NPCs, experience and promotion rules, all kinds of great stuff in here. And once you get through all the narrator tips, there's a great listing of key Klingon NPCs. Of course, Worf is here, Gowron is here, Kalas 2 is there, the Duras sisters, everybody you'd expect to see represented is there. And then you got some generic NPCs for Starfleet, the Cardassians and various others. So it's a really great book. So should you buy this as your first book? I would say probably not, unless you know you're going to play a Klingon campaign. If you're not going to play a Klingon campaign off the bat, then just buy this one and go for it. If you want to play the Federation, I would still get this one, or I would get the Tricorder set if you're a fan of the original series. I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, I think if you're a real Star Trek nut, you might as well just go ahead and buy both of these things. I didn't regret that whatsoever, because I was able to learn how to play just fine from this book, especially after going through the starter set stuff and getting the basic idea of the 2D20 system. And the Klingon Empire Rulebook has cleared up my remaining rules questions and added in some new options for me to bring into Star Trek, including, making it more in-depth and cool to make a Klingon character that can serve in Starfleet. So, there's really no downside from my perspective. If you're an experienced role player and you don't need, a starter set, and if you got your own, you're willing to buy the dice separately, then I would buy this if you want Feds, this if you want Klingons from the start. Buy both if you're a super fan, and just get going. Just start with the starter adventures in the backs of the books and go nuts, and you'll be just fine. Now what we'll do is we'll take a look at the Tricorder set. Now this is the more recent release. I think it's a genius idea. It's kind of their first test of the super starter set idea. So the idea is that it looks like those big old kind of shoulder carry tricorders that they had in the original series. And it's got a magnetic lid closure. And when you open it up, you get these cool little displays and stuff like they had on the old school tricorders. And inside, you really genuinely have everything you need to play for a whole group. So you get a box of specially colored dice that are matching the color of Kirk's tunic in the one very particular part of the series, which is kind of weird green color. And you've got 10 weapon dice. So this is really actually enough dice to play for a table. So that's great. Then you've got the Keyhole of Eternity, which is a kind of multi-part campaign. I think it's 3 acts in total, so enough for a number of sessions. It's a really good campaign again. The adventure writing for Star Trek has been pretty good, pretty solid in general, I would say. It also comes with 6 momentum tokens, which is the most you can have at any point, and a whole load of threat tokens for your GM to play with, so you got that as well. Then you have an absolute load of these lovely character and ship sheets. So first off, you have the USS Lexington, a Constitution-class starship, and it's got an original crew on the back, just says that. For the original crew, on the flip side, you have their background and a picture as well. So you can get to know these pre-gen characters. You've got a lieutenant commander, you've got an ensign, actually she has a reference sheet on the back of hers, maybe because she's not high-ranked enough to get a picture. Then we have Lieutenant Pren, who looks like so. So we've got the TOS-style outfits for the ladies. We've got Commander Reiter, who's the first officer. And there he is. And we've got Lieutenant Commander Barrett, who is an Andorian. And we have Ensign Pavel A. Chekhov. How about that? And on the back, we have a security oversight and tactical reference, which is handy. Then we have the original series NCC 1701 Constitution class Enterprise, which is wonderful. All the talents, all the usual info you would need is there. And then we have the original crew. So we've got James T. Kirk as captain. And on the back of these, we have references for officers in that area. So, for example, Kirk is a commander, so he's a commanding officer reference card. Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott is the chief engineer. On the back, we have a more general rule summary for him. For the lieutenant, Hikaru Sulu. We have helm tasks and navigation tasks because that's his main role. We've got Captain Moore. He should be with the Lexington crew, or she rather. Anyway, she's the captain of the Lexington, and she looks like that. Hopefully, you can see all of her. There you go. We have Lieutenant Uhura, Chief Comms Officer. So on the back, we have minor actions and comms and internal systems tasks that she can do. Then we've got Dr. McCoy. So we have combat actions and attacks and damage. It includes stuff like things you can do to help out in combat, heal people and such. And then we have everybody's favorite Commander Spock. And on the back, we have the sensors and internal systems reference. As a science officer, he'll be handling lots of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You've got a whole original Constitution-class ship with its own crew. You can take them on all new adventures, or you can play with the actual crew of TOS, the original series, which is fantastic. Or you could have them be NPCs that guide you on your shakedown cruise. I mean, it gives you many options on how to work with it. The best thing about the whole package, however, in my opinion, is this Rules Digest. Now, it's only soft cover. You can buy it separately as well for about 20 quid or less, depending where you go. Basically, so it's the complete 2D20 game system for Star Trek Adventures. It's got a focus on the UFP, the United Federation of Planets. It's got a full catalog of antagonists and stuff. And it's just a really nice, sort of compactified, rewritten version of the complete rules. So it's 304 pages. Because they're focusing on the original series, they've got more ability to kind of cut the space down. And one of the other things I requested from Modiphius is that they do another version like this of the rule book for the TNG era, because I know a lot of Star Trek fans that they can't sit through TOS anymore. It's the show is much more slow paced. There's a lot of they were very progressive for the time, but it's still quite sexist and all that. So. But the TNG era, the Voyager and DS9 era is a lot of people of my age and younger and slightly older, we grew up on that stuff, so getting people into TOS is a little bit harder than it would be to get them into TNG, I think. But the book is really well laid out. Everything is designed in that classic TOS style. Lots of bright colors popping everywhere. Little colorful dots with nonsense numbers on them, just like you'd see in the consoles on the show. We've got the classic kind of original races in the Federation, the Tellarites, Vulcans, Andorians, all that kind of stuff. It's a really great rules reference. So if you want to get into the game and have an actually fully complete campaign-ready kind of box that you can just bring to the table and just go, this is the one to get, right? Because unlike the starter set, you have the complete rules, basically. You have a full set of proper dice. You've got a giant set of pre-gens. You can play as the characters you know and love, or as new people that they provided for you on a different ship of the same class. The quality of the included adventure is good. And then, the book gives you everything you need to carry on from there. So I got this for £62, and I thought it was absolutely well worth it. And now, just a tip for UK viewers, I saw earlier today that Dungeonland was selling this excellent package for a mere £44. So I extremely strongly recommend that you buy it. Even if you're not planning to play much TOS, I mean, it's worth it to do it, just do a little change of pace here and there, a little bit of nostalgia. Then you get a full set of extra dice as well. You get the rules reference. You get this funky carrier case thing. I mean, for 44 quid, it's quite a lot to get for that amount of money. So basically, those are your four options. This is the Tricorder set, they call it. I really wish that they would do the exact same thing, as I said, but for the TNG era. I think that would sell like gangbusters because, I had no problems getting a hold of this one. I didn't pre-order it or anything like that. The price has dropped significantly. I think it sold well. It seems a lot of the fans, of the line definitely bought it. I mean, I certainly was not hesitating to buy it, even if just for like the cool new colored dice and all that stuff alone. And it is just a really good value. Bent this page a little bit now. I feel silly about that. But yeah, so here's the rundown basically. If you are coming from nothing, you've never played an RPG before, then I would say, yes, probably get the starter set, but just know right away that you need to get 2 more sets of dice to go with it. So it's not going to be as cheap as it seems to get a table. If you're going to play in person, of course. If you're going to play online, you can use the Modgel Discord bot, and it'll handle all the rolls for you, and you don't need to worry about it. But the lack of the PDF copy really does hurt the value. However, because you can get it for like, I've seen places selling it for about £12 on deep discount. Certain RPG specialty stores like Dungeons and Land and other places sell it for 12 or 13. So I mean, with that plus £7 for the official PDF, it all works out about the same. So it's not too terrible now. If you've got more experience at the table, and you really just want to just dive into 2D20 head first, and especially if you've got a fondness for the original series, the Tricorder set is an absolute no-brainer. I love this thing. This is what I think all starter sets should be. I'd rather pay, $60 equivalent and get, a campaign-ready box where I've got the full rules, I've got all the dice I need, I've got a bunch of pre-gens, I got a cool little campaign to start out with, and we just go for it. And I think Modiphius has learned that as well, because they've done the same with the Agents of Dune box for the Dune RPG, which is also fantastic. And I'll show that at one point as well, because I have that on the shelf too. So this is kind of like a super starter set. I strongly recommend it. But yeah, again, if you are an experienced role player and you want the most beautiful presentation of the rules and you want to have the most flexibility in terms of eras, then the core books are the way to go. The main book will give you everything you need to play as a Federation player in TOS, TNG, Voyager, whatever era you want, basically. And there are further expansions, of course, that allow more character options, and there's new campaign guides coming out and all that sort of stuff. But right out of the box, you can get any kind of Federation character you want, basically, from that era, from TOS to, Voyager, basically. With the Klingon book, I mean, there's more info about here in Klingons than I even knew. You got extra stuff, like you can, run your house, try and build this reputation. So there's a political layer added to things. It's a beautifully presented book with a bunch of additional content, and the rules are beautifully presented, and the book itself looks nicer. So if you love the Feds, still get this, but at some point you should definitely get this too. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit. Basically, I think the Star Trek Adventures box, starter box, it's not bad. I've seen worse ones, but if you're used to the quality of a starter box from, say, Free League, where everything's just beautifully presented, they're a little bit more expensive, but they just pack it full of stuff. They're filled to the brim with cool things. That's not this. They cheaped out a little bit on this one, I have to say, and it does not have enough dice to play. That is 100% sure if you're going to be playing face to face. So just bear that in mind. So if you're brand new to RPGs, though, it helps you learn as you go. So this is probably the best way to do it. Second best way to dive in head first, if you don't mind the TOS focus, definitely the Tricorder set. The rules guide is fantastic. I mean, just the inclusion of the dice alone is a good value. Plus, you get a campaign in there as well. You get the momentum and threat tokens, all that cool stuff. And for the hardcore, get the core books, buy some dice, and go at it. And eventually, depending on your leanings, get whichever core book you didn't buy first. You won't regret it. I really love having both these on the shelf. They both have things that I can use, whether I'm doing Klingons or Feds. So anyway, that's it for me. That's my summary of the 4 different ways to start playing STA. From here, I'm going to talk more about the system itself. I'll start probably with the core book with the focused on Federation. We'll go into it a little bit more detail. We'll talk about the the pluses and minuses, the things that I think really work well, some of the things that needed some work. Later, we'll cover the Klingon book, what I think they added to it that really worked, some of the special features that you get for the Klingons and all that. And then we'll look a bit at the supplements, of which I own basically everything except the Discovery campaign, which I refuse to buy because I hate that show with a burning passion. And likewise Picard, but I will buy all the Lower Deck stuff that they just announced. I'm looking forward to that a great deal. So anyway, getting off track. I hope that was helpful to you folks who might be thinking about getting into Star Trek Adventures. If you're in the UK and you're looking for a game, give me a shout. I might be running one soon, or if you're running one yourself, you need a player, I'm happy to jump in. I'm familiar with the system. I got all the stuff on my shelf. I'm ready to go. I'd be happy to play this game anytime, anywhere. I think it's great. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you have disagreements with my recommendations, or if you've had other experiences that you think worked out better for your group, please let me know. I would like to hear what you think. And if you got any more hot tips, I'm always ready for those. So until then, keep safe, stay healthy and well, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, bye-bye.